Okay, should be up and running now. Welcome to the Nottingham Buddhist Centre. Just a few moments while we all settle in, see who else is going to arrive, and then I'll introduce what we'll be doing. Just going to check. Yep. Oh, can you hear me? A little bit quiet. Testing, testing. Excuse me while I test the mic. Thought we were doing okay, but I seem to have lost all the volume. Let me turn it up a little bit. Well, please feel free to let me know who I've got. That one. There we go. Okay. So hopefully that's a bit better. That's still quite low. That's slightly better. Okay. All right. Glad you can hear me. Yeah, I have to sort of judge it according to I've got these little meters on the program I'm using. So I'm never entirely certain what I've got. Okay, well, welcome to the Nottingham Buddhist Centre. I'm glad you can join me. I think we'll get started. So yeah, welcome back, or welcome to this session if it's the first time you've joined. So my name's Gareth. Some of you may know me. Yeah, I'm usually the person who does the Tuesday lunchtime session, and today we are doing the loving kindness meditation. So we do two different meditations here. We do this one, which is about cultivating well-wishing for ourselves and others, and then we also do on the other week, the alternate week, we also do the mindfulness of breathing, which is about concentrating on our breathing, using that to sort of focus and concentrate and calm the mind as well. So if you're unfamiliar with any of the meditations, then I will be guiding us through, but if you're completely new to it, it might be best to start with our meditation toolkit, which you can find the links for below in the video description. And there's guided meditations, but there's also introductions to all the basic practices. Yeah, and that might be the best place to start if you're very new. Yeah, so today we're going to be focusing on the imagination. So this is something that's, I suppose, in the background a lot of the time when we're talking, when we're introducing this practice, or when we're engaging with it. In a way, the imagination is involved all the time throughout our entire lives, but that's perhaps putting it using it in quite a broad sense. But yeah, I really wanted to spend some time just paying attention or discussing what we mean by the imagination, and perhaps working against some of the ideas that some of us might be working with, that we don't really have an imagination, or we don't have a very good imagination. Ideas that might kind of stand in the way of us feeling like we can really fully engage with the metta bhavana, which seems to demand so much out of us. Yeah, so Yeah, so I'll just launch straight into it basically. So there are obviously a whole range of ways that you can get into this practice where we're calling to mind ourselves and other people, and you can do that really in any way that seems to work for us. So the obvious way, or what seems perhaps like the most obvious way for most of us, is sort of forming a kind of mental image in our heads of this other person, um, perhaps going about their lives, perhaps just seeing them as if in a sort of portrait gallery in the mind. Um, and when we're doing that, that's probably what we most commonly associate with the imagination, in its kind of, yeah, it's sort of forming mental pictures of things that aren't directly in front of us. Uh, and yeah, and whilst that's sort of fair enough, what some of us might find that more difficult than others, particularly if we have a sense that we should be able to form a really clear picture of this person, a very detailed image, and be able to sustain it very, very sort of consistently. And when we find that we can't do that, we perhaps get the sense that, oh, we can't really do this practice properly. We don't really have an imagination. Um, uh, yeah, maybe let's go back to the mindfulness of breathing. Well, that one's a bit easier. I know I've sort of, I don't know if that's, don't know if it's a story I've got. I don't know if I have the story that I don't have an imagination, but I definitely have worked with the story that uh, things aren't very clear today. I can't really picture them very clearly, so I'm not going to get much out of it today. So that story kicks in for me at times when maybe I'm, yeah, a bit more distracted, and that particular facility to sort of picture things in your head doesn't seem as available to me as maybe it is other times. Um, but I really want to push against that idea. So in two ways. So firstly is that we can engage the imagination in many other ways. So in some ways, imagination isn't the best word for what the imagination actually is. So it isn't just about that ability for us to picture things mentally, but it's really that ability to evoke, uh, uh, in this case, the existence of others, really in any way. So it might be through mental images, but it might also be through a sort of a more physical, a more embodied sort of imagination. So uh, we can sometimes produce the idea of someone being close to us without them really being there, and that's a form of imagination as well. That and just because it doesn't use that kind of visual faculty doesn't mean that it's any less valid a use of that imaginative faculty, which is really about I don't know, being able to apply the mind, being able to engage with ability to sort of conceive of things. Yeah, being able to use that in a more active way, whereas normally we're kind of doing, the imagination is working in a lot more kind of a passive way, just interpreting what comes to us. And we all have that ability. As I say, it's kind of, in some ways, it underpins our whole experience of the world, that we sort of move around experiencing beings and objects and people and things. But they become clear only through a process of imagination at a certain level. That raw kind of sense data that's coming to us through our senses all the time is interpreted by a sort of imaginative faculty into people and into things. And we can have stories and associations around those things. And when we leave them, we leave with a sense of what we've encountered. Yeah, to anyone who thinks they don't have an imagination, you only have to recall the fact that you have dreams, or that we're able to daydream about things that we'd like to do, or places we'd like to go, or things we'd like to buy, which is probably a pretty familiar one to everyone. That's all imagination as well. Yeah, and while that's yeah, so that's worth bearing in mind as well. That not only are there other ways into imagination than just that visualizing sense, but the faculty is there operating in the background all the time. It's part of what makes us human. And when we go into this practice where we're trying to get a sense of other people, yeah, it's really good to the fact that you can even recall people that you've encountered means that you have the faculty, if that makes sense. If we didn't have any imagination, you wouldn't know you were meeting others at all in a certain sense. Yeah, it would just be, I don't know, bodies and facial features, and which never quite to come together into the sense of another human being. A bit like sort of imagining those cases where people lose the ability to recognize faces. Obviously, they're still seeing a person's face, but they no longer are able to connect that with a particular person. So it's just a set of features. Yeah, and that's one element of imagination at work there. Yeah, so practically, what does that mean? Well, today I'm really going to encourage you to explore those other possibilities for the imagination, those other ways of connecting with the existence of another person, or in other ways of evoking them and the reality of their life. So whether that's, yeah, perhaps you might want to try this more physical sense, even the other senses as well. Like, what do they sound? Can you remember what they sound like? That's often that can be really vivid for me actually sometimes, if I can remember someone's laugh or the way their voice sounds. That can really bring them to life in a particular way, and sometimes. Yeah, and those are all really valid ways of yeah, just tapping into a truth which is sort of more than merely the imagination. I suppose that's the other danger of talking about the imagination, is that we start to think that all of this is just in our heads. But really what we're doing in the practice is that we are playing around with that stuff that is in our heads, the kind of mental images, the mental sounds, the sense of physical presence that we can evoke on our own, to tap into something which is true but hard to see, which is that the others are really, really there. Even, yeah, sort of strange that when people are actually with us, it's very easy to lose the profundity of that, and to sort of become absorbed in our own concerns and sort of lose sight of them. And actually, it might take some time on our own to be with them more fully. And the strange ironies of the loving kindness meditation. In any case, I've probably talked more than enough there. So yeah, that's our theme for today. So yeah, I really want to encourage you to play around with the other senses, the other ways to evoke other people, and yeah, just to see if we can let go of that story about not having an imagination, if it does arise. That yeah, you do. It's just a case of working out how to sort of engage that most fully for you in the moment of meditating. So that's what we're going to be doing. So if you want to settle into your meditation posture, if you're not already in it, so settling down into the ground. Supporting your hands if you need to. At the same time as we're rooting down, having a sense of rising up, that thread coming through the crown of the head. And of course, it's fine to make little adjustments over the course of meditation. If you really start to feel a bit lost with your posture, which is quite possible, just let go. Just see if we can soften wherever we are. I'm going to have a brief body scan, but just before that, just calling to mind your reason for meditating, your reason for practicing, whatever that is, even if it's just a vague sort of emotional sense rather than thought out ideas, and just using that to reinforce the intention to stay with this practice, coming back each time we wander off. Choosing to set aside whatever else we've been preoccupied with. And the brief body scan, so coming up into the head, tuning into the sensations there in the crown and the scalp. I want to take a couple of deep breaths to start with. Seeing if we can let go into the ground or whatever support you're receiving from a chair, for instance. Letting go of any unnecessary tension. Softening the face, the jaw. Coming down to the neck and the shoulders. And flowing down into the arms and the hands. Back into the chest and the upper back. Feeling inside the body, as well as the skin and the surface, the belly and the lower back. Really feeling that belly expanding and contracting as we breathe. Down to the groin and the pelvis. And down again into the legs, the thighs, the knees, the calves, and the ankles and the feet. And coming back to broad awareness of the whole body. Just having a sense of the emotional tone that's manifesting in our body. The areas of tightness and energy which suggest a mood. Bringing that awareness of the emotions as they manifest in the body with us into the metta bhavana, the cultivation of loving kindness meditation. In the first stage, calling ourselves to mind. Perhaps that seems strange that we need to use the imagination to connect with ourselves. But again, we are constantly using the imagination to construct our sense of who we are. We always have an image of what we look like, how our body is arranged. Even if we are just dwelling in our body, that's probably there somewhere. And we can meet that body image with a sense of kindness, calm acceptance, Or if we're visualizing ourselves more deliberately, trying to do that with kindly eyes. Each time we find we've wandered off, calmly coming back. No need to judge ourselves harshly. Working with distraction is part of the practice, and another opportunity to cultivate compassion for ourselves. Moving in your own time into the next stage, calling to mind a good friend, someone that would be pleased to see. And again, we can use any of our faculties as an avenue for the imagination, whether we're visualizing them, trying to get a sense of their face, imagining them going about their life. Perhaps calling to mind their voice, their laughter. Or a sense of sitting close to them. of their body occupying space close to ours. And none of the senses, these imagined impressions of them, need to be particularly vivid. All of them are just a means to reach towards this sense of them really being, as complex, as important as we are. And still working with distraction, coming back from all the other things the imagination wants to occupy itself with. Distraction itself proves that you have an imagination, and a vivid and powerful one at that. And the third stage, calling to mind a neutral person, someone we don't feel strongly about one way or another. Again, all of our past sense impressions are available to our imagination to evoke a sense of this person, the ongoing reality of their life. And still being patient and kind with ourselves, even if our sense of this person is dim and distant. The fact that we can call them to mind at all in any way is activating the imagination, is training that faculty to recognize others as more than the set dressing of our own lives. Moving into the fourth stage, calling to mind a difficult person, someone we're not particularly pleased to see. Again, being patient, kind to ourselves, particularly if the response to them is quite strong. Although again, this is proof of how potent our imaginations are. Even the idea of this person can provoke such strong feelings. Noticing the changes in the body even that it makes. And just the picture of them in the mind's eye. Sound of their voice to the mind's ear. And set the heart racing. Tense the stomach. Having recognized that, we can soften the body, And see if we can use the same faculty in other ways. How else can we call them to mind? What else do we know about them? Or could we reasonably presume? Presumably they have friends and family, people who care about them very much, or see other sides to them than the one that we do. Behind all of our impressions of them is a mind much like ours, seeking, at times quite desperately, contentment, safety, and the end of suffering, even if it's in ways that we cannot agree with. Still working with distraction, with our tendency to wander. Coming back each time we wander off. And then in the fifth and final stage, bringing together everyone we've previously considered, ourselves, the good friend, the neutral person, the difficult person, noticing our different responses, and today also noticing the different ways that we were able to connect with them. Perhaps some methods work better, and from there extending our well-wishing outwards, taking in more and more of what we are conscious of lies beyond ourselves, whether that's the room or the street, the area around where you're sitting, opening out more and more to take in the entire world and beyond. perhaps it's radiating outwards in a less visual way, but using that sense of the felt body, extending our well-wishing in front and behind, to the left and the right, above and below. And even if we can't get a clear image of what the rest of the world is like, there will be for us some sense, some notion, however dim, of everything that is beyond what we can immediately perceive. All the other people existing in the world, we probably already have feelings about what they're like, what we can expect from them. Perhaps they seem dangerous. Perhaps we have pictures of what the rest of the world is like. Once we've become aware of how we're already imagining everything else to be, extending our well-wishing towards that. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering. And starting to let go of the intention to cultivate kindness, coming back to broad awareness of the body, noticing any changes, and in a moment I'm going to ring the bell, and then you can open your eyes and draw the meditation to a close. Okay. I hope you're still with me, and I hope that went well. Or not that there are necessarily good meditations and bad meditations, as much as it's tempting to think in those terms. As I was sort of saying before, even if that sense that we ought to have very vivid impressions of these people, even if that's not really happened, we're still engaging that imagination, sort of retraining it in a way. It's active all the time, just in our sense of who's around us and what we're experiencing. It's sort of there in the background, shaping the sense of what's happening. I was trying to touch on that in the final stage. This sometimes that final stage can seem, at least to me, rather a bit abstract. That you know, I have these pictures of the Earth or something like that. And actually, maybe that really works for you. It does for me sometimes, but what really works at the moment is just starting to tune into this sense that I'm already imagining the world. Particularly now, like I suppose with all the sort of global health crisis that's going on, we're all being affected by our impression, imagined idea of what's really going on. And as much as that seems beyond our control, and in a very real way it is, we can also, I don't know, come to see that sense of how we're constructing an idea of the world a bit more clearly, and even by directing some compassion towards it, I think it makes things a lot easier actually. I mean, the world's such a complex place, and there is so much going on in it that any idea we might have about it is bound to be rather limited. I mean, there's so much going on just in one person, let alone however many billion of us there are now. That sense of I don't know, it's almost like what's on the periphery of your awareness, this very vague sense of what everyone else is doing and what's going on. Noticing that and then softening towards it, or directing some kind of kindness in whatever way we can towards that sense of, towards that peripheral notion. Somehow that really brings it alive and makes me clear that I'm sort of living with that all the time, and it's clearly everyone else's as well. Given, you know, it's really clear that when people are feeling stressed by just their awareness of what's going on in the world, even if it's not hitting home that directly, so that might be interesting to consider, and I think brings the importance of seeing the imagination as something that's always kind of there, and which isn't just about picturing things visually in our heads, but encompasses that whole way that we construct a sense of the world. Really makes it clear how that really impacts our lives on a kind of daily basis. So if you have any questions about this practice or anything that we do at the centre, you can always hang on a little bit and pop some stuff in the live chat. I'll be on here for a few more minutes. If not, there's always the email, and which you can find through our website, or thank you very much, or you can contact us through social media. We'll be back tonight, 7:30. I think it might be Richard tonight, but I'm not 100% sure. And then we'll be back also at 1 o'clock on Friday as well. I hope the rest of your day goes well, and take care of yourselves. Thank you very much for joining me. And as I said, I'll be on for a few minutes more, but I'll say goodbye to you now. Thank you, Sam, also for letting me know you could hear me. I'm guessing that worked all the way through. No problem. Glad you could sit with me, Sam. It's really nice knowing that being able to put some names to who's on the other side of the screen. It's also a bit of noise from, again, construction work outside, and also from the sort of construction work we're doing downstairs as well. We're refitting the kitchen and also redoing doing some maintenance work to the heating as well. So I don't think that's come across on the audio, but yeah, it will all pay dividends by the time we eventually reopen. In some ways, it's been quite lucky that we do have this time where the centre's not in use to really do some of the kind of deeper maintenance work that's needed doing. Okay, well, I think I will call it a day, unless anyone's got anything else they want to say. No, I don't think so. Okay, well, thank you very much if you've stayed to the end, and yeah, hope to see you next time. Take care.